Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Tom Laux with the Communications Department, City of Marshfield. And we're doing the school board candidates for the primary coming up on February 20th. And today I have Richard Kranz, one of 7 candidates running for this year's primary. And we're going to get to learn more about Richard here in this interview. So thanks again for joining us. Well, like I said, Richard, you're here in the hot seat now today, as I call a hot seat. But let's learn about yourself. Tell me about you, your family, anything you'd like.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Tom. I am originally from Wisconsin and was born and raised in the Milwaukee area. I've been in Marshfield over 5 years, about 5.5 years. And so I have a long family history here in Wisconsin. So it just so happens that my 5th great-grandfather settled here in 1837. He was a Revolutionary War of 1812 hero. So I got a lot of family background here in Wisconsin, and I'm proud to be a public service.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Well, let's turn it into why you decided to run for the Board of Education, and if you get elected, maybe explain some of those priorities. But first, why?
Well, I have, I guess my interest is to make a difference in the future of our public schools, and the students, teachers make a difference here, and I think, there are probably some priorities. Maybe bring a little bit of a different perspective, not being originally from Marshfield. I would say that I like it, the fact that it's a nonpartisan position, and that you have to be able to bring different parties or different views together and compromise for the greater good. And that's what we need. I think we need to listen to each other a little bit more instead of being so partisan. I think it's constructive. It's a constructive way to approach things. And I decided to run with the encouragement of friends and neighbors. So they kind of convinced me to run, put it that way. I was a little bit of a reluctant on it, but I have there's a couple priorities. We can get into that, of course.
Okay. Well, thank you for putting your name in the hat. We all appreciate that. And I'm going to just jump down here. When you were explaining a little bit about working together, there's going to be times if you get on the board that you're going to have to vote no or yes, and your, I'll say colleague could be voting the opposite. Well, what do you do when that happens? You say you have to work with each other, and you're talking about things are nonpartisan and that stuff. So how does that work?
Well, I think it starts with agreeing to disagree, and just being civil, approaching it. The fact that you're working for a greater good. We're human. We're always going to have differences in opinion and views. Just people coming together for the greater good. Just remember that, I think, is a good approach.
Okay. Well, that also has another question here earlier on, again, the attributes and behaviors for school board members. What do they need to be doing both at meetings and outside of meetings? Do you think there needs to be some kind of behaviors out there with being on the board?
Well, I think that from what I gather is that the responsibility of the board is to appoint the superintendent, and the superintendent oversees the implementation of the rules that the school board makes. So I think it's important to set a good example when you're making the rules, but also making sure that you're doing oversight to make sure they're being implemented correctly.
All right. Well, let's turn gears here a little bit and talk about organizations, activities in the community. Are any of those that you might be involved in that you'd like to share? Anyone that might help you if you're elected?
I'm not sure if it would help me if I'm elected,
Okay.
but I do have a passion for history. So I'm a member of the Northwood County Historical Society.
Okay.
Some wonderful people, and I did love enjoying and touring the Upham Mansion.
Yeah, it's pretty
Governor's
neat.
Mansion.
It is very neat. And,
Very nice.
We work with a few of those people as well over there on a consistent basis. So welcome on that. All right, let's talk about any differences between you and the other candidates. And I know it's hard for you to know the other candidates. You may not know them. So how do you know their differences? It might be a hard question to answer, and if you can't, that's fine too. But I thought I'd throw it in there.
Well, thank you for asking.
Sure.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know most of all of them, but I will say what it differs me. I don't have any children in the Marshfield Public Schools, but I do have a passion for education. I hope that we can raise the academic standards and also prioritize safety. I think for students, teachers, faculty. Sadly, when I went to school, we didn't have to worry about security, and now we have to prioritize that. I think that needs to be a priority.
Yeah, with all the news you hear every day, it's different than when I went to school, when you went to school. It's just cameras didn't exist back then, so.
Closer cameras are necessary, and from what I'm hearing, they're not prevalent or non-existent in the Marshfield Public Schools. So they should be required.
Okay.
Would be.
Let's talk about any experiences or skills that maybe you have that you can help pass on if you're elected that might help you out.
Well, I'm pretty good at communicating with people. A little tooting my own horn there, but I can work on compromise or compromising with people. I think that you can still, again, agree to disagree. You're going to have differences. And I think that would be my approach. I mean, what was the other part of the question?
Basically, that's really what I was looking at, and I think that really answers what we were looking at. Basically, we were talking about some of the skills and stuff prepared to be a school board member. But let's talk about the role and responsibility of a school board member versus maybe somebody that's a superintendent or on administration. As a school board member, if you're elected, what is the main responsibility that you would have to do?
Well, as a school board member and, you're responsible for providing a quality education for the kids here in Marshfield. And you have to implement, you have to pass the rules and, regulations, and then you have to make sure the superintendent is supervising and implementing them. From what I'm hearing, it's not quite the setup is not quite the way it should be, as far as the school board should be kind of overseeing the superintendent and the administration, whereas, and I don't think it's quite, from what I'm hearing from neighbors and friends, especially with neighbors with kids in school, it's important that you're not only you're passing the rules, but you're also have oversight, making sure they're implemented correctly. I think there's a hierarchy there. There's a school board, the superintendent, and then the administration.
Right, there is definitely. Any goals in mind that you feel you would like to do right away if you were in, or goals that you feel that this current school board should be doing?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's going to require some research on my part first, since I'm, not most familiar with the school. But as I mentioned earlier, I think to prioritize, we need to raise the academic standard. And this is from my input from my friends and neighbors, but we also need to make sure that safety is a priority. I think one of the challenges is going to be budget. I think all of us are willing to pay a little bit more with property taxes. If the money's spent wisely, then I think we're good with that. We have to keep things in perspective. I know there's a referendum that didn't pass, and we have to keep in perspective that Wisconsin is one of the highest property tax rate states in the country. So the folks in this community pay one of the highest property tax rates in the country, and so you can only stretch, your income so far, and it gets to the point where, like, whoa, I can't really handle that increase in the property taxes. So we want to have those goals, but we need to make sure that they fit into the budget. That's the challenge.
It is a challenge in both personal life and your job and possibly being a board member. Budget priorities. How do you prioritize a school budget? Because that's going to come up in discussions, and how do you work with that? How would you?
Well, you have to. There's a lot of things that need to be done. And we also have to make sure that it's being spent wisely. So there has to be oversight. You have to engage with the school, the administration. You have to engage with them to make sure that everything is spent wisely in order to do that. I think you have to prioritize academic standards, safety, and I think along with that comes maintenance of our buildings. From the input that I've been getting from my friends and neighbors is that there are some things that need some attention as far as maintenance in the schools, and we need to make sure that they're maintained and they don't become a bigger burden in the future if they're not addressed.
That's right. It happens with everyday items that we have personally, like our own vehicles. If we don't address them, they do fall apart. Well, if you're just joining us, I have Richard Kranz with me, and we're talking about the school board, and he's running for the Board of Education. And we're going to take a short break, and after we come back, we're going to talk about communications. That's been a topic that's been discussed with the school for quite some time, so we'll be right back.
On each episode of The Jet Set, we have your passport to travel, food, lifestyle tips, and fun.
That's right. Hang out with us and buckle up for the talk and tips you need to be an expert traveler, live better, and be inspired to embrace the on-the-go lifestyle.
Don't miss The Jet Set right here on Marshfield Now.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to our program with Richard Kranz, a candidate for the school board, and he's one of 7. Well, like I said before the break, we're going to talk about communications. That's been a discussed topic for many years, and I kind of want to talk about the role of the board, Richard. What is their role in public relations? Are they the ones that should speak to the public? Should there be a communications director? Should it be the superintendent? Should it be the teachers? Who should it be?
Well, I think that the superintendent's main role, and forgive me if I'm stepping over the line here, but I think the main role is to implement the policies and to oversee the implementation of those policies. So I think that the Board of Education can play a larger role in communicating with the community as a whole. So we can say, here are the rules that we wish to establish, and I think that there can be. I think we have to. again, we can learn to be respectful with each other, agree to disagree if there's disagreements, look for the greater good, I think, and I think that we can have positive communication, but I think that the school board should play a bigger role.
Okay. How would it be best for the education to communicate to these kind of groups or even citizens? Is it a platform? Is it the media? Any kind of tool that you feel that might help? What are your thoughts on communication? Could even be face-to-face?
I think nothing beats old-fashioned face-to-face. And I think like a public forum, I think, would be productive so that the community knows. With any position, political position, oversight is key. I mean, that's why, we have checks and balances in government, not federal, state, but also local, so that there's oversight. We want to make sure that transparency is a big deal, and we want to be transparent and have oversight. I think we could use more of that. Okay.
All right. Well, in the 6 of the candidates I've already interviewed, they've addressed that our education is a good education. Our kids have top scores in the state. What else can the school district do to prepare students for a bright future?
That's a good question. My goal is to raise the academic standards, and I do hear that we do have great teachers and great variety of courses for students to take. But what I think that could be done is that the schools could work a little bit more with the community and things such as some of our local heroes, the police, fire department, and we could meet with some of our local businesses and maybe have some of the students do. I'm a big believer in hands-on. So I think that a lot of times when we, field trips, hands-on, face-to-face is also a good inner part of the education so that they can connect their academic life with a real profession. And I think if we're able to do that, that I think gives the students a leg up in the working world.
All right, thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. Vision. You already stated quite a few vision and ideas for education by working with businesses and getting the word out of what the students want to do. Any other ideas for education, math, anything like that?
Well, I have to tell you, I have a passion for history, so that's my big strong point. Both my parents being artists, I also have a strong love for artwork. And I will just tell you, when I was in high school, I was in high school in a Milwaukee suburb. When I was there, I was voted most school spirit, so I love sports, and I think it's an important part of teaching young people. Sportsmanship is a good part and a good help to teach people how to interact with people.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's talk a little bit about teaching our kids. I call our kids because I have 2 kids also. And what do you teach in the school system? There are things from cyber safety now that we didn't have 20 years ago, wellness, bullying, even sex education that's been around a long time. What is the role? Is that the role of the board to get involved, or is it just to set a policy?
Oh, well, it could be. Okay. I mean, we have to compromise on that, I think. I think that the role, the role, I think of education would be some of the things that you mentioned, which are, can you mention them again?
Yeah, I was just looking like cyber safety. We know that's so much different than it used to be back when I went to school, and just wellness, safety, health. It's another one, but I even put sex education because we all have had that.
Yeah.
I know they refer to it in a different way, but I just basically put it that way. Easier to say. And bullying, we see that. What, is there something that they should get in to help alleviate any of that stuff?
Well, I agree that that bullying has been a huge problem, especially even including cyberbullying. And that's why I think it's important that every school should have a counselor available and a security officer. I really think that the security officer should be uniformed because it should be a deterrent for anyone that's being aggressive or is making a threat to student or the teachers of the facility. As far as, yes, I mean, there is a lot of problems with the cyberbullying. I think that every student should be safe and free from that. So we have to, I think that that's a good goal, is to make sure that the students are not being harassed at school. And I, from what I hear too, is that it could be better enforced. Is what I'm hearing, and I will make sure that that's done for the kids.
Well, I know you've been getting a lot of information from some friends and neighbors, best you can. You're not on the board, so it's a little bit harder in that area.
Yes.
You've been following it. How do you do any improvements? Any suggestions of any improvements that you think could be made now if you were elected, or later if you're elected?
Well, I think there's quite a few things. I think, again, I want to just kind of go on a little bit of the list. Raising the academic standards, security, making sure that no student is harassed, every individual student is treated with respect. I think that that's important. And the other thing that you mentioned too, sex education too. It's important, as long as it's age appropriate. I mean, when you get into a certain grade, when you're in high school or you're sometimes in middle school, depending on the subject. I think that's as long as there's parental oversight, that the parents are involved in the process. And I think that if we get the parents involved in the process a little bit more, that's a good thing, because that's part of the oversight and transparency. I think all parties feel good because there's the teacher, which is a very important part, the parent, the student, the faculty, everyone's involved in it. And when you're communicating all together, it gives you the ability to achieve better things. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
It definitely does. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's talk about student achievements and the board helping with that. I know in a few of the past interviews and just hearing some changes in how they do valedictorians and I guess how do you work with achievements? There's AP honor classes, there is college courses already out there. One of the candidates even said 8th grade. I was so surprised that if you're in 8th grade, you can already get high school credit or something like that. I don't totally remember, but what do you do to, any concerns in that area of achievement or any ideas that can help make that grow?
Well, I have to admit, I'm going to be honest here. I'm surprised that the valedictorian and the salutatorian is a controversy. It certainly wasn't when I was in school, and I would make sure that we honor that. And hard work by a student for academic excellence should be recognized. We really do need to recognize. I think that's just a common sense thing, and I think it also motivates people to do better. I think we have to have some, I think we all know young people need a little motivation sometimes. So I can speak for my nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews. But yes, I do feel that, that we could do better on that.
Yeah. Well, people like to know they're achieving success, and they like to know people know that they've been rewarded.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And
And I was going to say, I think one of the compromise would be that we recognize that, but we also can recognize the top 5% of the class. We can do both. We don't have to do one or the other.
True. And I think that's the way they were trying to look at it. It's always hard to please everyone.
Right.
Or please the top 5% or 10%. The world's changed, and sometimes you say you try to please one and not the other. But I just thought that would be a good one to bring up. I wanted to talk about state funding, and how that impacts a lot to do with what the board will do and what a school can do because of funding and how the public education in the state works. Anything that you think should be changed or added within the state?
That's really a good question. Sure. I know that a lot of that will be out of my control. Right. So I have to work within the framework that I have available. But we certainly would love to see more funds going into public education that is spent wisely. Okay. That we're using the taxpayer dollar wisely, and I think that there's always going to be room for improvement in the public schools.
Okay. All right. Well, we know what it's like out in the state, and you hear it on the news all the time of different educations. So thanks for bringing that up. Well, this is your chance to tell the voters why they should vote for you at the polls or an absentee, because that's coming up here before the 20th. Nowadays, you can get your vote in earlier. So we want to make sure that you get a chance to tell them why you're the candidate. So go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I will work hard to improve the public schools. I have a passion for education, and I want that to resonate and to others. I want to communicate and with others and make sure that we're maintaining great academic standards and a great quality of staff. And as I know, many businesses, not just public and private, struggle with staffing issues, and I think we need to make sure that we keep a quality staff. We obtain quality staff, but we also make sure that we're retaining them, keeping the staff. So for me, I ask for your vote. And I will work hard. I think what differentiates me is that I be kind of a new voice, a different voice, I should say. This would be my first run at it, so I think I do bring a little bit of a different perspective.
All righty. Well, that sounds good. Thank you, Richard, for coming by and sharing that information with us, and as well as our viewers out there in our TV and streaming land that we have. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
And hopefully maybe we can invite you back to either if you're on or maybe a history program. That's we always like history and love to do that. So thanks so much for joining us here on our Get to Know program.